Right, folks, welcome to another episode of Common Sense Podcast. I probably should start by clearing the air because we made some changes that you may have noticed. One is we're now called Common Sense Podcast. We tried to do one of those kind of sly changes, but some people did catch it. Some people messaged me and said, hold on. What's happened to LTCS? The reason we changed it is because it's a bit confusing. It's a branding thing, really, because what would happen is we would say, don't forget to use the hashtag LTCS. And then I've seen some people online butcher that. I've seen people CTFF, LLCS. So I said, you know what? I'll make it easy for you. Common Sense Podcast. That way, if you want to get involved, you want to talk to us, you want to share your opinions, you can do so by just typing Common Sense Podcast or Common Sense Pod. And so nothing's changing really other than that. So welcome back. If it's your first time, what we try and do here is get into difficult topics, complicated topics, perhaps, with some great guests discussing really important things. I want to encourage you, if you haven't done so, to listen to the last podcast with Chris Williamson. It was great. Literally, it was great. So go listen to it. And I hope you enjoy it. As ever, this podcast is brought to you by Common Sense, tcsnetwork.co.uk. A news outlet that brings opposite members. Oh, that makes sense. That's not opposite members. That brings people from different political backgrounds together to do discussion, to do debate, and to learn from each other. We like to think we're healing democracy one conversation at a time. Sorry, I'm in my Brandon bag. Today, we're going to talk about something I hate talking about. And I really must put this out there. It brings me no joy that the Labour Party is currently going through an existential crisis. This is not my favorite pastime. I do not enjoy criticizing Keir Starmer, but unfortunately, Labour is in an existential crisis, and I have to talk about it because yesterday and the day before, as we saw all the different election results pouring in from Hartlepool, the London mayoral elections we heard about last night, Mark Drakeford's first minister win in Wales, the Scottish National Party's win in Scotland. They didn't get a full majority, but just 2 seats off, and all the different English council kind of elections. I just feel like I keep being vindicated in what I'm saying about Keir Starmer and the Labour Party. And so in this episode, I want us to talk a bit about the future of the Labour Party, right? What's next for the Labour Party? Can things carry on as they are? And so I brought on as a guest someone who you've seen before. It's becoming a regular really on this podcast, but he's a fellow moaner like me. Like, we're online and we are moaners in chief. And so I'm bringing forward commentator, podcaster, DISUNOMICS. How do you do?
Not too bad. Fellow Mona, yeah. Ramonas, they used to think Ramonas. I was called a Ramona as well. Boy, it's not looking too pretty out here.
It's a shame. We're both wearing black, and it looks like we're here at the funeral of the Labour Party.
Yeah. Hopefully, it would have been nice if it was the political funeral of Keir Starmer. Let me make that clear before people.
I was about to say, let's not.
Yeah, political funeral, but it's just became the funeral of the deputy head instead. But yeah, it's looking tragic, very, very tragic.
Okay,
entertaining, but tragic.
Yeah. We're going to get into everything in detail. So before we do that, just want to get your first response. When you look at the last few days in politics, right, especially kind of British politics, especially, how would you sum up how you felt? Just give us a kind of, if someone just arrived from a foreign planet, right, and they landed and they go, what's been going on? How would you summarize what's been happening?
Chaos. Utter chaos. We're seeing so how I felt was kind of like just defeated, simply because although I am politically homeless, I do like there to be some form of accountability and checks and balance when it comes to political performance, and I wasn't of the opinion that the Conservative Party had performed at adequate level since Boris won the general election in December 2019. However, the country thought otherwise, as they resoundingly confiscated seats all over the country. From the Labour Party, I believe Labour lost 301 seats. I think the Conservative picked up 274 councillors, 12 councils. It was just, I felt like, how is this possible? Even though I kind of felt it was going to happen, but just to see it unfold, and then we see of the by-election of Hartlepool, a place that's been a Labour stronghold since 1974. That's a good 10, 15 years before I was born. And not only did the Conservative win that by-election, they almost doubled the Labour popular vote. Almost doubled. So I was just seeing slappings up and down. I'm just like,
yeah,
wow. this is where we are. Like, we're literally the 2 weeks leading up to this has been riddled with, are the Conservatives this corrupt?
Yeah.
Didn't matter. Just slappings. Slappings all around.
I think it's really important for people to understand, like, what you just said, because chaos is really important. And as someone who is interested in political science and really interested in all these moving parts, it's really, you've got a prime minister, right, Boris Johnson, who, if you're just you're just a curious onlooker, you're not really interested in deep political analysis, you look at him and you go, yeah, I don't really trust him. This is someone who's a bit dodgy, quote unquote. And again, all the news seems to be bearing witness to that. That here's a prime minister who's doing a sort of cash for access, one who is, he's got one channel for everybody else and one special channel for his friends, So you've got all these Tory sleaze, different investigative pieces coming out about, unfair PPE procurement processes, cash for access, like I said. And so that's the backdrop against which you, as the opposition, who for the most part can say anything you want. You can literally say anything you want. You can promise anything you want. All you have to do, right, is mount a compelling vision that's separate from what we see. So even with this kind of shambolic, quite frankly, government we have, when it comes to things like cash for access, sleaze, it's at fever pitch. With that backdrop, you then have Keir Starmer, who is presiding over, quite frankly, chaos. Why do we say chaos? In Wales, Mark Drayford does pretty well, and he's a pretty open socialist. So no, he puts his tent out, and he does pretty well, and and he's re-elected. Great. In Scotland, you see there's really no Labour gains. Mm-hmm. The SNP, they maintain their stronghold there. In English councils all across the country, you see Labour councillors being displaced. And then in Hartlepool, which is probably the crown, right, of all these different things we're talking about, Hartlepool, as you said, is this Labour stronghold. And the first time ever you see a conservative MP, right, is now. So this is just mind-blowing to me. After Brexit, after everything we've seen with the coronavirus pandemic, this is when the Tories start making history? As a Labour leader, how can that be the case? Now, here's what I want to play to you. I want to play to you Keir Starmer's response, because this for me should start where we analyze this. So I don't quite know how to do this properly, because this is my first time doing this. So if it doesn't work, forgive me. But I have to show you what he says and how he responds. Can you see this?
Yes.
Superb. So can you hear the sound?
Well,
Could you hear that sound?
Yeah, I did.
Superb. Let's listen to his response.
Disappointed in the results, and I take full responsibility for the results, and I will take full responsibility for fixing things. We have changed as a party, but we haven't set out a strong enough case to the country. Very often we've been talking to ourselves instead of to the country, and we've lost the trust of working people, particularly in places like Hartlepool. I intend to do whatever is necessary to fix that.
What will you do? Because some people in your party are going to say you need to move more towards the Jeremy Corbyn agenda, others away from it.
This is not a question of left or right. It's a question of whether we're facing the country. We have changed as a party, but we've not made a strong enough case to the country. We've lost that connection, that trust, and I intend to rebuild that and do whatever is necessary.
How, Keir Starmer?
What does change mean in, say, policy terms?
It means stopping as a party, quarrelling amongst ourselves, looking internally and facing the country and setting out that bold vision for a better Britain and
Sorry,
changing
Sadiq,
the things
what is
that
that
need
vision?
changing.
What
And
is
that
that
is the change that I will bring about.
Lemon Husky, United General Secretary, says people don't know what you stand for. What is that vision?
Our vision is of a country that ends the injustice and inequality that millions of people face every day. But fundamentally, we have to show that we are facing the country, that we've learned the lessons of this bitterly disappointing set of results.
You say you take personal responsibility for the results. Are you up to the job of Labour Party leader?
Yes, and I intend not only to take responsibility for the results, but to take responsibility for fixing things. And I will set out what change is needed over the next few days, but I'm absolutely clear in my mind and absolutely determined to do whatever is necessary to fix things and to make sure we can make that case to the country in a compelling way.
I can't listen to anymore for obvious reasons. When I listen to that interview, and it gets worse, by the way, he just starts kind of saying just generic things about.
I'm actually I haven't seen that. I'm mortified.
Yeah, I just looked at it and I had my head in my hands and I just thought, one, why is he stressing random words as though it's even remotely inspirational and convincing?
He's
No,
out here. He's just out here vibing. I'm sorry. He's just out here
saying,
vibing.
he sounds like a supply teacher that's lost control of, and then they're holding on to the last modicum they have, which is just to stress certain words like vision and injustice. Listen, okay, you're against injustice, right? You tell me what party's for injustice. Because the idea is that you're the opposition. So you tell me the party that goes, oh, he's against injustice. We're for. Everyone's against injustice. What kind of? I mean, it's just ridiculous to think that's something to say after another loss.
What I want him to answer, which I know he's not, and many people in the Labour Party is: do you think the majority of people in this country believe they're facing injustice? Because I don't. Like, who told you that these people are fighting against injustice as well? Because they haven't told you that. They haven't told you that. So why do you keep back? What is the injustice you're talking about? Like, what? I hate this level of incompetence. As we spoke about on my first appearance on the Common Sense podcast, I spoke about Boris Johnson. So this is for people to know that I'm not on the party. No, I just hate incompetence. You are talking about a vision relentlessly. Detail it. This is what you want to do economically. This is what we want to do with the healthcare service. This is what we want to do with welfare. This is how we feel about foreign policy. This is how I feel about education. The fact that you're saying you've been Labour leader for how long? Over a year. And you're talking about the country hasn't heard our vision. Whose fault is that?
Yeah.
You have opportunities to speak literally multiple times a week. You have opportunity to bring the most catastrophic government in my lifetime. Like in basketball, there's a thing called alley-oop where one person throws the ball up for another person to come in and dunk the ball. It's one of the easiest baskets to make. Boris and co have been throwing you alley-oops since February 2020. You have not taken one.
Yeah.
Like all you have to, as you said, being in opposition is one of the greatest jobs. All you have to do is just wait for them to do something silly and talk about how you would never do that and how you can deliver. You don't have to even deliver on the things. You could just keep promising the things you're going to deliver, even they may be unrealistic. You've had ample opportunities. It's so bad that you have failed for so long that the whole country had forgotten about how badly Boris handled Corona because now things are opening up and the vaccines are doing well. So they've forgotten that over 100,000 people have died.
And it's, I mean, you're so right that the thing the saddest thing about this whole situation was when a friend called me because he unfortunately hadn't been paying attention to the whole mayoral elections. And he said, Mike, what's their policies? Who should I vote for? You know, give me a lowdown on what's happening. And he texted me this. And I voice noted him. I said, listen, ordinarily, I would go into depth about the different policies, Sadiq Khan versus Sean Bailey. I might even go, here's what Nico, the YouTuber, believes, right? Unfortunately, here's the only thing I could tell him. I said, I cannot justify a world where the Conservative Party have a thumping majority in Parliament and also control the London Assembly and also have the mayor. So for that reason alone, just so we can have some sort of opposition, you have to vote for Sadiq Khan. And what a shame that we can't even talk about the merits of candidates anymore, because quite frankly, we have to stop, because of democracy's sake, a Tory a Tory sweep. And that's where we've got to now. That's how we have to make decisions. It's just based on the fact that you cannot just have one man with a thumping majority, unchecked, pretty much, controlling the whole of the country. That's just a problem.
I was reading that they're thinking, F it, let's call another general election.
Yeah, let's do it early. Let's do it early.
Yeah, because obviously we've had a Tory government, we had a Boris government for about 18 months now. So just might as well just top up an extra 5 years of power, take it to good 19 straight years of Tory governance. Why not? Because we're gonna win anyway. We might even add to our majority. Who knows? Like, it's just outrageous. It's just outrageous. Like, where did Labour go from here? Because what's interesting, because on Friday, I love election day. Like, I love election day. Usually I stay up for the night. This time I'll just wake up. So on Friday, I'm just sitting there with my work laptop in one hand, and then I have Sky News or BBC up on my TV, just watching it all day. And then you just have different people from the Labour Party. One person comes in, blame the Corbynites. Other person comes, blame Keir Starmer. One person says, oh, the country hasn't heard our message. Other person says, we ain't got a message. It's just blame game after blame game after. And even in that, so I think it was Sam Coates from Sky says, it'll be interesting to see if Keir Starmer is going to address the division of the Labour Party and address like the Corbynites and infight and whatever you've made. And I think he kind of did that in the clip that you just showed us, talking about we need to stop kind of the infighting and whatever have you made, which is true to a certain degree, but it's just ghastly. Like, you're making a move. Go on.
I think you're right. You the question you asked about what happens now with Labour. I was telling you before, like, we can sit here and complain about Labour all day long, but of course the question is, what actually are the next steps, right? And what needs to happen, and how do we have a situation where Labour isn't obsessed with cosmetic changes? Because that's what it seems like it's obsessed with. We saw Angela Rayner, who was the chairman or chairwoman rather. She's been campaign coordinator. She's been moved aside. There's a shadow cabinet reshuffle apparently happening today. And all these cosmetic changes, you're going all these, change of how things look and how they feel. And it's like, maybe it's time. And I love that there was a quote or a statement I saw in the media where, see how you have long COVID, which is when you have persistent COVID symptoms and stuff like that. People say that the Labour Party has long Corbyn.
That's a good one still.
And the idea is it's still reeling in part from the chaos that some would say Jeremy Corbyn created within the Labour Party. He beats his chest about how he grew Labour membership to over 600 something thousand. That's true. And that's a membership number that any party across Europe, quite frankly, would be proud of. However, whilst doing that, he created this Labour Party that doesn't really seem like it exists within the UK political continuum. It's this kind of odd party that, again, we saw the most amount of people ever, in the last 30 years or so, reject, right? Because it doesn't seem to fit in. So the question I have for you is, one thing Jeremy Corbyn said in the interviews post all these different results that came out was, he said, well, look at Mark Drakeford in Wales. He's someone who's an open socialist. He's been very forthright about, this is what I believe. I'm a socialist. This is the vision I have for the country. And he's making gains. And so what Diane Abbott has said, what Jeremy Corbyn has said is, listen, our policy prescriptions were very popular. So perhaps what we need is to go back to those policies, build a case for justice and equality and a radical change of the UK system. And perhaps if there is that opposition, there's that genuine other way of doing things, for want of a better term, people may actually then go, okay, I see choice, and vote for that. Because the criticism Keir Starmer often gets is, all he offers, or seemingly seems to offer, is a kind of Tory light, where it's kind of business as usual with nips and tucks here and there. And that obviously isn't galvanizing people, because the Labour heartlands, like Hartlepool, are just crumbling. And you're seeing Tory gains, historic Tory gains, at a time where like Labour has I can't see any more politically opportune time as this for an opposition party. I can't see it.
Neither can I. Like, as I said, the Conservatives are giving you several opportunities. So in terms of, I'm not too sure about Corbyn and Diane Abbott's belief in terms of their policy. I think some of their policies have been adopted by or seemingly be adopted by the Conservatives, but I don't think their general range of policies weren't too terrible. Like, I went through their all these parties' manifestos. I believe it's more of the branding of the Labour Party, and I think the brand of the Labour Party mesh with how British people feel and British ideologies. So I think when you're suggesting radical change to a country who doesn't necessarily believe in this radical change, why are they going to vote for you? Like, so I think that's one of the key things. I was tweeting the other day that since the World War II, we've had 75, 76 odd years. 46 of them have been conservative rule. So what that says to me is that the more conservative value, this country probably has more conservative values than we probably would like to admit. So when you're looking at what Labour can do, I think it's, first of all, being a legitimate opposition. One, so Keir Starmer doesn't seem strong. None of these characteristics: strong leader, consistent. Like, when in the 2019 general election, one thing I did notice from Boris is he was very good at branding. So every single time you ask Boris a question, he will divert it straight back to Brexit. Straight away. No matter what you talk about, you could be talking about nuclear energy. Oh, yeah, Brexit. Football, Brexit. So having a clear message, you knew exactly what that party stood for, and it happened to be marginally more popular than the opposition. With Keir Starmer and the current Labour Party, there is no clear path of what they stand for. During the last 1 year, people still don't really know what Labour's position is on Brexit. We don't really know. People don't know what Labour's positioning is on coronavirus. We don't know. And these are the two of the biggest issues in the last 2 years. And nobody knows where your party stands. So I think actual strong leadership in the terms of every time your speaker speaks and everybody in and around your party is from the same sheet, and it's convincing. Like, even the way he speaks is not convincing. And even like, it's just absurd. So in terms of, and also actually when you speak, show, like, first of all, ascertain what working class British people actually care about. Not what you think they should care about, what they actually care about.
Yeah.
It's almost kind of like the relationship bloggers that say, love somebody how they want to be loved. Don't love them how you think they should be loved. It's the same thing with politics. You can't tell people you should care about these injustices.
Yeah.
Like, I personally think people should. Me personally. But if you believe that people are voted routinely against their best interests,
yeah,
you're clearly misunderstanding what these people perceive to be their best interests to be. So I think that's probably the number one thing that they need to do. Number one.
Let's actually do this. Let's take a look at Boris Johnson's victory speech and compare that perhaps to what we saw from Keir Starmer just a few minutes ago. So here's how Boris Johnson responds to the victory in Hartlepool. I'm just going to share that real quick.
To the people for placing their confidence in the Conservatives. I want to congratulate Jill on a fantastic campaign. And for me, what this means is that I think that it's a mandate for us to continue to deliver, for not just for the people of Hartlepool, not just for the people of the northeast, but across the whole of the country. And I think there's a lesson out of this whole election campaign, the whole local election campaign across the whole of the UK. It's that the public want politicians to get on with focusing on their needs and their priorities. So coming through the pandemic and making sure that we then build back better, and you can see some of the evidence of economic confidence that the Bank of England's been talking about, the prospect of a really strong rebound in the second half of the year. I think people want us to focus on that. And I think that here in Hartlepool, clearly people were, this is a place that voted for Brexit, and we got Brexit done, and then we're able to do other things thanks to that. It's thanks to Brexit that we've actually been able to go ahead with the free port in the whole of Teesside, do things like take back control of our borders, so we're able to deal with things like the European Super League, and of course we're able to do things a bit differently when it's come to the vaccine rollout that's been so important, and able to deliver that faster than other European countries. So
listen. As much as the blood doll was finishing me, and it's just this is the party that is just slapping Labour up and down, like slapping Labour at every single juncture. But look at the branding, like he's not even, he is a terrible orator. But even still, he knows how to brand, and he sounds convinced what he's saying. He's talking. Look at the things he's referencing. What people want, not what Labour wants. What people want. So he's saying. So he mentioned Brexit. He mentioned building back a stronger economy. He mentioned the European Super League. Like that, even the European Super League, in the grand scheme of the political sphere and life in the UK, is not very significant. But he knows that the whole country cared about it. The country stood still for 3 days. What did Boris and them make sure they did? They were front and center with what the public wanted. What does that do? Build up equity. Speak about coronavirus and dealing with coronavirus and getting the vaccines in place and opening things up. What does that do? Build equity. It builds trust. Even so, that literally wipes away so many mistakes you've made. A lot of these mistakes are a bit more political. Ooh, cash for curtains. That seems a bit dodgy. Dominic Cummings. That seems a bit dodgy. But in grand schemes of things, that everyday, maybe me and you care, but everyday person, they don't care about cash. They don't care about cash for curtains. Like, am I going to be vaccinated? Are my kids going to be safe in the streets? Am I going to be able to go on holiday? These are the type of things that people care about, and the Tories have been, credit to them, they've been on point with it, and that's why
I just think, I mean, there's even one thing from a branding perspective. So let's say Keir Starmer is really interested in branding. His team has let him down big time, because you've got you've got a situation where Keir Starmer is in Parliament, it seems, standing behind some books, talking about leadership, whatever it is, and you got Boris Johnson, wind blowing his hair in Hartlepool, laughing, doing his thumbs up, and he's and he's on top of that, he's so good at playing like policy dot to dot. So we know that Brexit is the big, Jenga block, for want of a better term, or the pillar for that the Conservative Party have built this, this tenure on. They're going to say, listen, what we've done for this election cycle is it's Brexit. We've got Brexit done. And so he then skillfully connects all the other wins that probably aren't that connected to Brexit, to Brexit. So talking about the European Super League and how, because of Brexit, and you're talking about the vaccine rollout, is that because of Brexit? Talking about, and you're like, hold on. But you're not thinking about it, because say what you want about Boris Johnson, and I've said a lot about hhim. I don't think I'm ever going to meet him, and I've met some other prime ministers. But say what you want to say about Boris Johnson, he's likable. There's an optimism about him that's genuinely, and that's the thing about Keir Starmer. It's really odd, but I don't think Keir Starmer is that likable.
He's not likable. He represents what people, no disrespect to him, but he represents what people are put off by politics. Like just his whole look, as you said, the branding. He's in Parliament behind books. People just thinking, oh, another politician. He's not very charismatic. Obviously, you can't help being charismatic or not, but he's not very charismatic. I don't even think Jeremy Corbyn is very charismatic, but at least he presented himself as like the everyday man. Like you see the way he dresses, the way he speaks, the way he presents himself. Keir Starmer just looks like a career politician.
Yeah,
and
literally.
a career politician that is doing badly in the game of politics against somebody that is doing better in the game of politics that looks like somebody that I can like. Like, there's a reason why you see Boris talk about, yeah, and as soon as things are open, I can't wait to have a pint down the pub. Like, there's a reason he does stuff like that.
But I think he actually does like having a pint down the pub.
No. Yeah, 100%. But there's a reason why his advisors are making that narrative
sure that forefront of the communication.
100%. Rishi sitting in a restaurant with like a little cap on and an apron, like they're doing this.
His one, Rishi's one is less potent because with him, you know, it's Brandon. He keeps hiring people to follow him around, like taking pictures. Like it seems it's a bit much. You know, it's a bit much.
Boris's one is natural,
but Boris is natural, and I just think, I mean, sure, people might say this is much ado about nothing, but I do think, in an odd type of way, even though he has a thumping majority, he's clearly leading from the front. And the fact that people are able to tell you what Boris Johnson, quote unquote, stands for and his values, that's something that hasn't been forthcoming with the opposition. They need to get on top of that as soon as possible.
Should I tell you a good example of Boris leading from the front? And when I noticed it was when Boris, unfortunately from him, caught COVID, and we had the daily updates. We had Dominic Raab come in, all these other people. Raab looked messy. Hancock, terrible. It was only Rishi that was all right when he was doing it. But even like in terms of answering the questions, they weren't confident, they didn't know what to say. When Boris came in, it's like he had control of the room. Like he knew how to bounce off some of the questions that he didn't really want to answer. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So even in that period, and that's when you had all the leaks coming out, all that type of stuff. But as soon as Boris came back, it was business as usual. So say what you want about Boris, at least he gives leadership type of energy, and he gives people something to get behind, whether you like it or not. You see what I'm saying? So,
folks, let us know what you think, because what I want to talk about now is, so you say you're politically homeless. What would Labour have to do to get you to a position where you say, you know what, this is my party?
Firstly, get that Keir Starmer guy. I don't want to see him again. Just get him out of here. Secondly, actually have some form of consistency and continuity in what you say or what you do. So even some personal things, like I'm not sure on how much we could talk on this because I'm not sure if it's completely settled legally. But we had the leaks that showed of how Labour Party people were basically lining up people to I'm not sure if it was Dawn Butler or Diane Abbott who was crying. I think it might be Diane Abbott who was crying on toilets. They told journalists where to find her. Some of their comments regarding Dawn Butler, like as a black man, these are not things that fill me with confidence whatsoever. And even some of the talk of them basically essentially self-sabotaging Jeremy Corbyn's campaign. So that needs to be spoken out and addressed head on, similar to how the anti-Semitism was addressed head on by the Labour Party. I want you to address these issues with how you're treating your black colleagues in the Labour Party. That's number one. Number two, which I think, well, that was number two, but number one, I said like a clear vision. Be clear. Be specific and consistent with how you want to rebuild this country, how you want to act in the best interest of this country, and actual good policies. I don't really know Keir Starmer policies, and I'm actually pretty plugged into politics. I'm not the most hardcore, but I like to keep my ears to the streets. I don't know if these lot are coming or going. I don't believe anything they say. It seems like there's almost been as many U-turns from Keir Starmer as there been from Boris. And you're the opposition. That shouldn't happen. So for me, just some form of unity. That's just for the sake of competence. So okay, I believe you're competent now, and then policy. Show how you want to impact some of the things that are key to British people. So for me, what's key to me is, or me as a person, is how we're going to deal with how globalization has really impacted the economy. Nobody really talks about that at all. Nobody. Nobody talks about that at all. So that'll be interesting. But then again, I'm not sure that's going to play well with the British people. But from a policy perspective, how are we going to make sure people are safe on the streets, and not just more police, tougher sentences, actual social policies that impact it, so prevention is better than cure, stopping it at its roots. These are the type of things. How are we going to bring people into this new technological age, this new green age, and especially in the northwest and the northeast, where we're seeing nobody's answered why London, Slough, and Reading has all the money. Nobody's answered that question. Why is that? So these are the type of things that I would like to see from the Labour Party.
I'm not a Labour supporter. I'm not a Conservative supporter neither. I look at some of these parties and I know that in order to have a healthy democracy, you have to have at least two different parties who at least can share different prescriptions and visions for the country and do battle and stuff like that. And I think the Labour Party does have some soul searching to do, because the old narratives of class and heavy industry are fading, and I think the party that wins the day is one that does what I think the Conservative Party do very well now, which is, oddly enough, a sort of progressive patriotism. So in America, some of the policy ideas that the progressives are interested in, oddly enough, in the last decade, the Conservatives have fronted. And so the Labour Party has been left as this kind of weird mesh of some people who think we're in like 1974, and some people who just kind of who are still in that kind of Blairite, just center left, a bit of position. And it's a mishmash of both those ideas, and there is lots of infighting there. And I think Jeremy Corbyn ignited those old, we socialism, we need to have he ignited that. And when he talks about, a party that's gone up to 600 and something thousand in membership, well, what's going to happen to those members? Because now they exist. And essentially, you've got a leader who, and I've spoken about this extensively in previous episodes and even written about it. You've got a leader who has to lead a party that has to be palatable to the country at large, but also has to seemingly satisfy this group. I don't want to use the word momentum, but we know that's the real red, deep red group you have within the Labour Party. The Labour Party has to work out who it wants to please, to be quite frank. Mm-hmm. Because if it's going to be a momentum, then happily be a socialist, put out those policies, be what you are, wait for the country to slowly come around, concede that you're going to be losing the next few elections, but it is what it is, whilst you build up the grassroots support for a radical change of the country. Be that. But if you want to be a kind of center left, pretty much what Conservative Party are doing now, but with a bit more social democratic tools and stuff like that, great. Be that as well. But to try and be both, I think is where people are getting a bit confused, and where you're seeing membership going up, but consecutive losses in elections and a crumbling away of the crucial infrastructure that you need to win a party. You cannot win a party by competing for you need safe seats. The way first past the post works, you've got to be able to count on a good, a critical mass of seats, and then you come. If every seat becomes a swing seat, you're not going to win political power again. So that soul searching, I hope, happens. And I hope that what they don't do is another stupid shuffle or reshuffle, as though that will somehow fix these more existential questions.
Yeah, we're going to put this person as a shadow minister for this, and this person as shadow minister for this, and all of a sudden the people of Hartlepool are going to really go, yes, come on, finally, wake up. What's wrong with these people?
Yvette Cooper is the shadow chancellor. Now I'm seeing that it's out of touch. And the funny thing is, in terms of the Labour contributors, i.e. folks who speak a lot about Labour, the Owen Jones, the Navarra media, they don't even support Keir Starmer, which means, and they have, again, ridiculous audiences, a lot of different people who support them, who are Labour voters. He hasn't even won over them. So if he hasn't won over them, who?
You haven't
Who's
won over.
leading?
You haven't won over the Labour media, let alone the overall media. You have no hope of success. All you're gonna have to do is to keep.
All right,
You're gonna keep getting.
it's a bit heavy.
It's true. Like if you can't get the media on side,
Yeah.
how do you expect like the people in Hartlepool, Liverpool? Okay, at least you won Liverpool, but all these other areas to take in your message. What if you even have
Liverpool could never be conservative.
Yeah.
If Liverpool's like, I am gone.
Yeah,
But-
yeah, finish. Yeah.
But anyways, listen, I spoke to DISUNOMICS before we started. I said, listen, have you got anything upbeat or positive just so we can leave people on a high? Because I imagine listening to this, you might be on your way to work and you're just thinking, this is a bit much, isn't it? You know, this is a negative way to start the week. So anything positive to share?
I think one thing that's positive to share is that it's not all doom and gloom if like many of us like effectively bully the Labour Party into competence. And I think that's the only hope. I think the only hope is the supporters of Labour is to bully them into competency. So many of us people, like, our voices are loud enough. Like when you speak on socials, like these are things that people track. There's a lot of people that follow these type of things. Like we need to make it known that what needs to happen. There needs to be a clear structure of how you're going to do things. Stop trying to appease us or maybe appease yourself. I don't know who you're appeasing with these, as you said, cosmetic. I call it vanity metrics. Like, oh yeah, we're gonna move these things around. No, like, so I think a positive that is that there's not all doom and gloom. If we people who want an actual opposition,
Yeah.
kind of bully the Labour Party into competency.
Yeah.
Like,
Of course,
maybe
I co-sign that. Maybe not the word bully because Priti Patel and all.
She got away with it. So maybe bully's in. Like she got away with it. Maybe bully's a new phase. It doesn't matter.
I think when you have the kind of majority and you know you control the narrative the way the Conservative Party seems to be doing right now, they can get away with anything. I mean, I think Boris Johnson would have went to India. You know, I think he just changed his mind last minute because honestly, even everyone's like, "You can't go there. There's a new virus." He's like, I can do anything I want because that's where he's at right now. He can. Yeah. I mean, it's odd because
shaking hands at the beginning of the pandemic. Oh, I see.
Remember when Donald Trump said that he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and people still vote for him? Oddly enough, that wasn't true. But it strikes me as that kind of similar energy is just what Boris Johnson's riding right now. I mean, it came out that he cheated on his wife, and the woman came out so his girlfriend or whatever. A woman came out, I forgot her name, the one who sold her story to the Sun about nothing happened. Folks just said, yeah, you know, it is. So someone said, oh, she's just looking for. Just moved on. Just moved on.
Oh, you got Tory donors to sponsor renovations into your number 10 flat, £800 per roll wallpaper. Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Just nothing sticks.
Immune. Herd immunity works.
It's just oh man. Well, listen, folks, I think you're right. We have to stay upbeat. We have to stay awake, and whatever party you support, like I said, I'm not a Labour Party supporter per se, but I still think it's important, not to borrow your term, that competence becomes a word we use more when we think about these political parties. It's criminal. I think it's so terrible for one party to control political power across a country. It's just not right. You know, to borrow the old maxim, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So on that note, folks, I just advise you to stay awake, stay alert. If you want to find out what's happening, you know, then you're in the right place. Let's hit the subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're maybe listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, equally would love you to leave a review or to put the stars thing. I am terrible at doing promo. As I'm speaking, I sound like Keir Starmer giving that speech after he lost. Just no conviction. Subscribe and Anyways, thank you for being a part of this podcast this year. You're essentially a regular now. This is I think this you've had the most appearance on the podcast ever.
Oh, it's an honor. Anytime. I enjoy it.
Oh, I think we probably should have another break. Just
Yeah.
I'm joking. No, this,
24.
this has been great, and I'm hoping the next time we speak, it's in better circumstances. Maybe it's the resurgence of the Labour Party, or it's a new party or something.
We literally say that in every pod, and it gets worse every time. It's got worse every pod.
So yeah, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm a bad omen. All right, in that case, we'll just wait till we see what happens next one. But as ever, thank you for being a part of this, and folks, enjoy a great week.